fourth day of Tevet. Today's class sponsored for the Refuah Shelema of our dear member, Mr. David Towel, known as Hurdle, David Ben Pauline. May Hashem give him Refuah Shelema among of all of the Cholim of Am Israel, as well as Yeshaya Ben Laura, Mr. Charlie Saka, among the Cholim of Am Israel. Additionally, today's class graciously sponsored by Emmanuel Salem and family. So Kadosh Baruch Hu bless his family with blessing, success, livelihood, beriut, health, and the ultimate blessing of all, Shalom Bayit, for him, his wife, and the newborn baby Tamar. Last but not least, today's class also dedicated Le'ilui Nishmat Juliet Bat Lili Aleha Shalom, and Yosef Ben Isha Alav Shalom. Iratzon that all the sponsors, we have great beracha and aslaha for the generosity and kindness towards our synagogue. So we are living this week in Egypt. Now we are in Egypt of the time of Yosef, that he's getting ready to meet his father Yaakov after many, many years of separation. Yesterday we concluded the class describing how Yosef HaSaddik, despite all the pain, all the suffering, all the hardship that he went through as a teenager, being sold several times, as a slave, as a manager, as falsely accused, and now as the viceroy of Egypt. What is the word that Yosef HaSaddik utilizes to understand whatever is happening now? He mentions a few times, Vaishlacheni Elokim Lifnechem, says, God sent me ahead of you. He's saying, He didn't send me, God sent me. The question is, which delivery service did God utilize? It's like you send a package, you go to a post office, and how many options they give you to send a package? Signature required, next day, priority, domestic, snail mail, UPS, DHL, whatever you have. So comes Yosef and it says, Vaishlacheni Elokim. It says, God put me here. The next, Be'ata, he reinforces it. Lo atem shelachtem oti henna ki ha'elokim. You did not send me. Again, why does Yosef reinforces twice, one pasuk after the other? So you may say, oh, Rabbi, two different aliyot. So the guy who went the second aliyah and the guy who's going to the third aliyah will get both messages. I think that what Yosef HaSaddik is trying to do is it's reinforce his love for his brothers and also not allow the brothers to start blaming each other. It is something that we're going to be discussing towards the end of the parasha, when the brothers are heading back to go back to Eretz Israel to pick up Yaakov Avinu. What does Yosef say to his brothers? It says, just one second, let me get you exactly the pasuk, and it says, one second, Al tirgezu badarech. What is the meaning of this word? Vaishalach et echav vayelechu. He sends his brothers and they went on the journey. And it says, Al tirgezu badarech. One opinion says, Al tichasu ze el ze al devar mechirati. It says, I beg you, don't point the finger to anyone. You could have said to Reuben, you were the oldest. You should have stopped us. Reuben says, hold on a minute, I'm not to blame. I was taking care of that. That's exactly what happened that day. The day that the transaction took place, Reuben wasn't there. Where was he? He was taking care of Yaakov Avinu that day. And that's why when he came back and saw what happened, he made keriah. He torn his garment. Literally, like a sign of mourning. Then you say, okay, Reuben cannot be blamed. But what about Yehuda? Yehuda had a little bit of instigation in the whole transaction here. And Yosef Sadiq, to preserve the peace and harmony, it says, don't fight. Don't fight. Why? Because if you're going to start fighting, you're missing the happiness. The moment that the brothers of Yosef will start fighting, what's going to be when they come to Yaakov? Because we have a big issue now. The brothers are coming back to see Yaakov. Who is going to tell Yaakov, by the way, Dad, remember 22 years ago we told you that he was dead? We lied. Can you imagine? You know who was appointed to carry such a mission? Sara bat Asher, the daughter of Asher. He had a daughter called Sara. This young girl, if I recall correctly, she knew how to play musical instruments. And when she started to play, Yaakov heard the message. And the Pasuk writes that the spirit of Yaakov was revived. What does it mean, the spirit of Jacob was revived? We need to understand two basic things in life. Happiness attracts godliness and blessing to the person. Bottom line, the opposite of happiness, what is it? Sadness, depression. It says you want to keep a distance from God, don't be happy. That's simple. Happiness is a magnet. Is actually, Gemara writes, אין השכינה שורה לא מתוך עצבות, אלא מתוך שמחה. You know, if you look in the book of Shmuel, there used to be an area where people who wanted to get a sample of prophecy will go to get inspired. What was the requirement in that location? Play music. Not the music that we have today. Okay? Merengue, salsa, rap, you know, all these things that we have out there, which is a lot of noise. Okay? They had real music. What was the music? Musical instruments. Probably, you know, you go to a certain stores, you go to the Apple Store or Spotify or different programs, they give you music to relax. Right? There is music to relax. There is a music CD, it's called Jewish Music to Relax. They are up to volume 7 or 8. They are cute, only instrumental music, very calm, very peaceful, very pleasant. You know, occasionally I listen to it. Sometimes I fall asleep, but that's a different story. Or remember, you go buy an alarm clock and they sell you with it, included, sounds of nature, rain sounds, wind, fire, right? Quiet. You press it, and it helps somehow your brain to understand. So in the time of Shmuel HaNavi, there used to be an area that they had musicians, literally musicians. They play music, and people will get there to get, I don't want to say high, because the word to say to get high, it means something very negative, but put it this way, to get spiritually high, to develop suddenly a certain power of prophecy, godliness, desire to godliness. That's, I think, what Rabino Elimelech writes in the Noam Elimelech, that sometimes a person is praying and suddenly you have the desire to move. You know, sometimes people move, some people stay like a statue, some people move too much, it makes you dizzy, okay? But occasionally, you know, sometimes you feel this, where this is coming from. Or suddenly in the middle of the prayer, you feel a certain level of happiness and a certain level of love to Hashem. It says this is guided from Shamayim. you got a moment of inspiration. Literally, a moment of inspiration to strengthen your bonding with God. Guess what? This is what happened with Yaakov Avinu. For 22 years, Yaakov Avinu was mourning the disappearance of his son. And I'll tell you why. There were two aspects of the mourning of Yaakov. Is my son dead, God forbid? Okay? Or maybe he is physically alive, but spiritually dead. God forbid. So what happens now if Yosef is spiritually gone? Physically he's alive, but spiritually he's gone. Guess what? We have an issue with the entire Jewish nation. Because we're missing a link. We're missing one of the 12 tribes. And if we don't have the 12 tribes all together, we need to go to another extension, to the next generation. And this was one of the concerns of Yaakov Avinu. So when he heard the music and he saw the gifts, as we know in the parasha, black and white, it says that Yosef sends specific gifts for his father. And I ask you, what difference does it make? Isn't enough the fact that you hear that your son is alive? Why do you need gifts? Because Yosef was sending a message to his father. What was the message? That he still remember the last Torah lesson that they learned together. זה פסוק, וירא את העגלות, ותחי רוח יעקב אביהם. The pasuk says, Yaakov heard the news. Okay, maybe something good. Then he sees the gifts. Why does Yosef sense this specifically? Because this was the topic that they were learning together before they separated from each other. If you remember, when Rabbi Mansour was here this Sunday, he gave a magnificent shiur. Many of you were here, many of you heard it or watched it. He explained that there were two aspects of Torah learning in the life of Yaakov. Textbook learning in a room without any challenge whatsoever. That was learning Torah, no issues. But there was a second aspect of Torah learning. This was the real practice of life. Where did he learn this from? You remember? The yeshiva of Shem Ba'ever. Now, why specifically did Yaakov went to this yeshiva? So you may say, Rabbi, what's the question? How many yeshivas were there back then? You know, close to 3,000 years ago. How many today? You want a yeshiva? Which zip code do you want a yeshiva? What type of yeshiva do you want? Baruch Hashem, even the community high school. You want a high school? We have one for you. Okay? So imagine, but Yaakov understood, I need practice. I don't need theory now. I need practice. Now, who was the teacher of Yaakov besides Ishak Avinu? Shem. Shem. You know, when people say anti-Semitism, the word anti-Semite, why do they say anti-Semite? Because of Shem. We are descendants of Shem. We are a Semite nation. That's why, God forbid, somebody who goes against a Jew or the Jewish people, how is it called? Anti-Semite. Now, who is this Semite? Shem, the son of Noah, the father of Tamar, and the teacher of Yaakov. The same person. So what's so special in the resume of Shem? Short answer. He survived the flood. He survived the Mabul. Surviving the Mabul, it means that you did something good. Surviving the Mabul means you saw humanity, you saw decline of humanity, and you saw the resurrection of humanity. That's exactly what happened during the time of the Mabul. 99.5 of the world was gone. With a handful of people. How many people survived the Mabul? Do the numbers. Noah and his wife. 3 sons, 3 daughters. Faige. 9, 8 people. Let's throw in Og, king of Bashan. Let's throw in God into the equation. Minyan. And I'm throwing God because yesterday I will say something that I did say yesterday but was not recorded. And not because it was something, God forbid, out of line, but it was something that came up after we finished the class in overtime. So someone asked after the class, how come, listen to this, how come God didn't come to Yaakov and let him know that Yosef was alive? And why didn't Isaac, Ishak, the father of Yaakov that was alive, doesn't tell his son, stop crying, he's alive? We need to understand one key incident brought down in the Mefarshim, in the commentaries of the Torah, what actually transpired the moment that Yosef was about to be sold. Binyamin was not part of the picture, so that's out. Reuben was taking care of his father, that's out. That leaves me 10 brothers. Yosef was where? On the pit.
Yes.
And they throw him where there was no water, but it was full of scorpions and snakes, the way the Rashi explains, God forbid. So we have 9 brothers here. The brothers are talking to each other. It says we need to make an event that no one will say to Yaakov that Yosef was sold. Hold on, one of them says, we are 9. We need 1 more for Minyan. Who is going to be number 10? God. So they made an oath, invoking a vow, invoking God's names, including God. No one was allowed to reveal to Yaakov that Yosef was sold. Obviously, we have a lot of questions in this concept. You know, since when God listens to what people are saying. But we need to understand one thing, that we cannot take the parasha just with a literal translation of what transpired. As I said yesterday after the class, we need to understand what happens in this parasha between Yosef and Yehuda. Yehuda represents the kingdom of David. Yosef represents what? Mashiach ben Yosef. There are 2 stages for Mashiach. One is the ultimate redemption, and the other one is the stepping stones to redemption. Like things that are happening. I ask you a question. How good was America or the world 5 years ago? Not 10, 5 years ago. No COVID, containers from China, $2,900 instead of 18 to 15. The dollar had certain value. Economy was doing great. Gasoline was below $3. Supply chain was flowing. Cryptocurrency was, in the conceiving stages.
Trump.
No inflation.
We get weaker and weaker.
5 years later, COVID. with the different variants. Inflation, it's happening. Dollar store change all the prices now, right?
25%.
Dollar 20. Can you imagine 25% increase? Salaries are the same,
Yeah.
and people, it's difficult to find employees.
Yeah.
I saw an ad the other day, $1,000 signing bonus for a restaurant, plus $18 an hour, plus free lunch or dinner, and still the sign is there.
Nobody wants to work.
That's what's happening.
They're getting free money from the government.
Yes,
Why work?
unemployment and everything else,
No reason.
etc. So, by the way, what I just described, it's written in the parasha. The pasuk says, "Baboker tomar mi iten erev, u'ba'erev tomar mi iten boker." Translation: prior to Mashiach's arrival is going to be a moment that we are going to say, "I wish it was." In the daytime, you're going to say, "I wish it was like last night," and in the nighttime, you're going to say, "I wish it was like it was earlier today." Yani, the changes,
Yes.
what we are experiencing, like it or not. I mean, there are a lot of changes coming along. New rules in New York coming up, I heard, before the retirement of the current mayor, huh? Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. But but overall, the whole political arena situation is very confusing, so to speak. Upside down, literally. So this is Mashiach times.
Yeah.
This is because as the time is going by, the more we realize that we are basically relying the way the Mishnah writes in Sotah. The Mishnah in Sotah writes, will come a time prior to Mashiach's arrival that cash will be gone from your packets. Azla peruta min hakis. I'm not writing this. Mishnah Sotah. Last chapter, written over 1800 years ago. Government will collapse and will be corrupted.
Yeah.
Which is true.
100%.
Can you imagine cash will be gone from your packet? Who would have thought? How many years people say cash is king? Now cash is a chadame, Everything through the banking system, everything with the crypto and direct deposits and Venmo and Zelle and all these halachot coming up, in the world of finances. So when the Mishnah writes, the money is gone from your packet, it's happening. So what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to convey the message that Yosef conveyed to his brothers. He says, do not worry. Everything that we see, how challenging on the surface may appear to be, as long as we see God's hands and involvement, you will prevail and you will survive. And this was the message of Yosef to his brothers, and that's why, going back to Yaakov, when he saw the gifts that Yosef sent them, he says, now I'm happy. That's why. What was the reaction of Yaakov when he saw his son Yosef? He hugged him and he cried. And you know what Yaakov did when he was crying? He said the Shema. Yani Yaakov says, now I'm ready to leave. He did not. Relax. He lived the last 17 years of his life, which is the title of next week's Torah portion. Yaakov lived the best 17 years of his life were with Yosef. 17 from birth until he was sold, and 17 from this week's Torah portion till the moment that Yaakov passes away in Egypt at the age of 147 years old. Rabotai, although today we barely concentrated in something deeper than the Pesukim and some insights, at the end of the day, Ma'aseh Avot Siman Labanim. The Talmud writes clearly that the reason why so much emphasis is given in the first Chumash in Sefer Bereshit, which is also known as Sefer HaYashar, the book of the righteous, Pirkei Avot, you know the famous Mishnah Pirkei Avot, it's based on Sefer Bereshit. Because the life of from Adam Arishon till Yosef and his family and everyone in between became the foundations of how a person to live a meaningful life. Many people live in the world, but how many have a meaningful life? Not everybody. But we as Yehudim, we have a manual of instruction that helps us to find meaning in our life.
Right.
You know, I was discussing something with somebody yesterday, and I was explaining to him that from our Torah perspective, he tells me, no, your religion has, he's Jewish by the way, he tells me your religion, says your religion has a lot of rules and regulations. I said, okay, I understand that, but being a soldier in the army also has a lot of rules and regulations. True, but it's the army. He says, I'm also in the army. What, you're a veteran, Rabbi? You're a vet? I said, I'm nothing, I'm a vet, but I'm in the army of God. He started to laugh. He got the message. He said, but I want you to know, you look at the Torah as a book of codes and rules and regulations. Do you know how many commandments are in the Torah about interacting with people, about talking to people, about the language that a person uses? I don't mean in which language, but the vocabulary that a person uses, the cleanliness. Oh, I didn't know that. The Torah also gives you this. I said 100%. So he says the Torah is not only a book of do's and don'ts. I said has a lot of rules and regulations, but the Torah also helps the person not only to live a proper life, an ethical life, a respectful life, but actually is preparing us to become a better person, to become a better husband, to become a better father. You know, like one of the dedications of today, you heard it before, for blessing, success, livelihood, but ultimately shalom bayit.
Beautiful.
Ultimate blessing, because once you have respect and love and a good environment in your home, everything else falls into place. It's like the shalom bayit seems to be the motherboard or the main chip, the main processor, and everything else is a sub-processor or a division of the main processor, but at the end of the day, it leads us to the main goal.
Is it?
You know, somebody was very frustrated earlier today, and he tells me, I'm very upset today. I say, why? Because he got an email from Amazon that something that he ordered 2 days ago, it was running late one more day.
Oh,
Okay, I got all kinds of customers.
right.
For some people, it's a problem. So I said to him, you remind me what's written about inducing a baby. A mother is pregnant, and they want to induce her to give birth. Not all the time inducing is allowed or permissible. Sure. If there is, God forbid, a medical concern, of course you follow what the doctor says. But inducing a baby is to schedule the doctor's vacation. That's a problem. Why? I'll tell you the following. Depending on the day of the week and the hour that the baby is born, that determines their mazal. And also don't forget what the Talmud writes in Nida. The baby's learning Torah. What, are you going to cut short the class? So I told him, the package will arrive to your home when God pre-established that the package comes to your home, not when you want it. That's why in the Birkat Hamazon we say, Be'ata noten lahem et ochlam be'ito, in the Ashrei. It says, God delivers the nourishment to the person at the proper time. It's like you wanted a deal to happen 2 weeks ago. And then suddenly God says, delay 2 weeks. Don't get frustrated. Because not only is not going to help you, it's going to affect you adversely. Remember the words of Yosef. Lo atem shelachtem oti henna ki ha'elokim. But I'd like to finish today's class with one more sentence. At the end of this sentence, the pasuk says, "Umoshel bechol eres Misraim." Kaddish in 1.5 minutes. And the ruler upon the land of Egypt. That's one. Comes the parasha later. They said to Yaakov, Yaakov, your son still alive, and he is the ruler in the land of Egypt. Now, why the redundancy of the Torah telling us about Yosef being the ruler of Egypt? We already know that he was the ruler. A few parashiot we discuss him, Yosef is the viceroy of Egypt. Why the Torah reinforces? I'll finish with this. When Yaakov is told his son is alive, okay, I'm happy. And where is he living? In Egypt. In Egypt, in the moral sewer of the world, then they say to Yaakov, no. He who Moshel bechol eres Misraim. If you are afraid that Egypt is running the life of Yosef, don't worry. Yosef is running the life of the Egyptians, that he did not allow their cultural deficiencies, so to speak, or immorality, so to speak, affected Yosef in an adverse manner. Yosef, the same one with Yaakov, Yosef, the same one in Egypt. My good friends, have a great day, everybody. Baruch Adonai Le'olam.
Amen.
Amen ואמן. רבי חנניה בן הקשיא אומר, רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות את ישראל לפיכך. הרבה להם תורה מצוות שנאמר, אדוני חפץ למען צדקו